Today, we're opening a case file on a massive cosmic mystery. You see, far out in the frozen darkness beyond Neptune, something is pushing things around, and astronomers have lined up a pretty fascinating list of suspects. Okay, let's dive into this investigation.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the evidence, this really strange anomaly way out in the outer solar system. Then, we'll profile our prime suspect, the so-called Planet 9. After that, we have to consider some other explanations, and I'll introduce you to a truly wild card theory. And finally, we'll see how this whole cosmic case might one day get solved. All right, let's set the scene. A crime scene, if you will, is the cold, dark frontier of our solar system. For years now, astronomers have been noticing that something just isn't quite right out there. The way some of the most distant objects are moving, well, it doesn't really add up, and it points to some kind of unseen influence. Now, the key witnesses in this whole case are a group of objects called ETNOs, or extreme trans-Neptunian objects. Just think of them as these small, icy worlds on these incredibly lonely, huge orbits that take them hundreds of times farther from the sun than we are. And here it is. This is the crucial piece of evidence. See, if nothing was out there affecting them, the orbits of all these ETNOs should be totally random, scattered all over the place. But they're not. They're all mysteriously clustered together, almost like they're being gravitationally herded by some invisible shepherd. And to get a little more specific, there's this key orbital property called the argument of perihelion. And for all of them, it's bizarrely aligned. This is what tells astronomers that this isn't just a fluke. It has to be a persistent, powerful force that has been organizing these orbits for millions of years. This is our smoking gun. So what could actually cause this? Well, the main physical explanation is something called the Kozai mechanism. To put it simply, it's a kind of gravitational effect where a huge, distant body can slowly sculpt the orbits of smaller things, forcing them into alignment. And that, of course, brings us to our prime suspect. So let's talk about our main person of interest. The candidate that just neatly explains all the evidence is a massive, undiscovered planet just lurking out there in the shadows of our solar system, and everyone is calling it Planet 9. So based on all these computer simulations trying to match the evidence, scientists have actually built a pretty detailed profile. They're looking for something that's about 5 to 10 times the mass of Earth on this huge tilted orbit, hundreds of times farther from the sun than we are. Basically, it's big enough and in just the right spot to be our culprit. A planet this big would have more than enough gravitational muscle to be that cosmic shepherd we were talking about, pulling all those distant, icy worlds into the exact orbital cluster we're seeing. It fits perfectly. So, case closed? Not quite. You know, any good detective knows you can't get tunnel vision. So before we go and indict Planet 9, we have to look at other ways the evidence could be explained. There are a few other suspects in the lineup. One alternative is, what if it's not one big object, but a whole bunch of smaller ones? Some scientists think there could be a massive, sprawling disk of icy debris out there. The combined gravity of all those little bodies, all acting together, could, maybe, just maybe, mimic the effect of a single giant planet. But there's a really strong counter-argument to that. Planet 9 theorist Mike Brown points out that a huge disk of objects should actually be easier to see than one single distant planet. And yet, for all our looking, we haven't seen a shred of direct evidence for it. So that kind of keeps Planet 9 in the lead. Okay, now for a really radical idea. What if there's nothing out there? What if the problem isn't a hidden object at all, but our actual understanding of gravity? There's a theory called MOND, and it suggests that over these huge distances, gravity just behaves differently than we think it does. And if MOND is right, it wouldn't just solve this puzzle. It would literally rewrite one of the fundamental laws of physics. But hold on, because this investigation is about to take an even stranger turn. We're bringing in a wildcard suspect, an exotic explanation that is truly, truly mind-bending. So far, we've talked about a planet, a disk of rocks, even a flaw in the laws of physics themselves. But what if the massive object is real, but it's something way, way stranger than a planet? And here it is. This is the wild card. Some physicists think that Planet 9 could actually be a primordial black hole. Now, this isn't a black hole from a dead star. This is a tiny one that was supposedly forged in the Big Bang itself, with the mass of a whole planet squeezed into the size of a grapefruit that our sun just happened to capture. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds completely insane, right?
But it's actually an incredibly efficient explanation. A primordial black hole wouldn't just explain the weird orbits, it could also solve a totally separate mystery about strange gravitational lensing events that we see elsewhere in the galaxy. And finding one? Oh man, that would be revolutionary. It'd be the first proof these things even exist, and it might even tell us something about dark matter.
So, there's our lineup: a planet, a disk, a flaw in physics, or a tiny black hole. The case is obviously far from closed, but the hunt for that definitive proof is absolutely on. The investigation is pushing forward on multiple fronts. You've got astronomers scanning the sky with powerful telescopes, looking for the faint heat or reflected light from a planet. They're also hunting for more of those ETNOs to make the statistical case even stronger. And for that wildcard theory, they're using telescopes to look for faint gamma-ray signals that might be coming from dark matters zapping itself around a tiny black hole.
At the end of the day, the strange dance of these distant, icy objects is a huge clue pointing to something profound. So, is it a new world in our own cosmic backyard, an exotic relic from the dawn of time, or a sign that we have to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics? The answer is waiting for us out there in the dark. The only question is, what are we going to find?